welcome back to Pattern. About 15% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions come from livestock farming. So you might think, okay, if I replace my meat intake with seafood, I'll be better off, right? But not so fast, because it turns out becoming a pescatarian has its own impact on the planet.
So Garrison Lovely recently explored the impact of his own diet. Found pescatarians are responsible for more animal deaths compared to omnivores. He joins us now to talk a little bit about his findings. Thank you so much for being with us. And I guess let's go to the beginning as we kind of explore your whole journey here. Tell us why you became a pescatarian in the first place.
Yeah, I became convinced to stop eating animals for ethical reasons a few years back. And I wanted to kind of gradually transition into having a diet I felt like I could sustain. And so I did something that I think is pretty common, which is I went pescatarian first, and then I eventually became vegetarian. But I later became convinced that on my own, logic, I was actually doing more harm to animals in the year that I was pescatarian, mostly because I was just eating more animals, and fish eat other fish. And I think that their capacity for suffering was actually basically just as great as that of a chicken.
So you said that kind of on your own deduction, you came to that reasoning. Have you kind of followed up on that and learned more about that train of thought that being a pescatarian might be, bad in other ways?
Yeah, I think I basically bought this idea that fish didn't feel pain or suffer because they didn't have a neocortex, and that's where suffering probably happens in humans. But then I became convinced, seeing more evidence, that fish actually do suffer and exhibit sentience and all these complex social behaviors. There was one talk by a researcher named Becca Franks that really convinced me of this in particular. And that switch just made me change my whole thinking about what the ethics of my diet were.
So you mentioned going pescatarian, then going vegetarian. I guess, where are you now after kind of stumbling upon these findings?
Yeah, I'm a vegetarian. I basically don't eat eggs because eggs cause about as much suffering in terms of like days on farms in bad conditions as any other animal product. So dairy is the last thing. And I feel a little bit guilty about it, but it's also hard for me to kick.
Just curious, when it comes to the egg purchasing, yeah, if you were to go on like a farm, right, with a bunch of chickens, but what if you were to find like free range chickens or someone who had backyard chickens and they, you could buy eggs that way? Would that be better?
Definitely better. I actually lived in a house last summer that had chickens just like laying eggs. The main thing is that those chickens are laying eggs at a higher rate than would happen naturally, and that can cause a lot of health problems. But compared to battery cages, free range or cage free is a lot better.
Okay, so let's say that, some people are like, I do want to make some changes. I'm just not ready to go all the way into nearly vegan or vegetarianism. What would your advice be to people that are trying to make some, at least smaller steps into helping the planet?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to think about how sustainable a diet change will be for you. I know a lot of people who have gone fully vegan and then snap back pretty quickly. If you're trying to do it for animal welfare reasons, moving from eating smaller animals to eating bigger animals will cause less suffering because like one cow can provide a lot more meat than a chicken, for example. If you're doing it for environmental reasons, the calculation kind of goes the other way. And so generally just reducing animal product consumption is the best way for both animals and the environment. But yeah, going from eating smaller animals to eating bigger animals is the best thing to do for animal welfare itself. And cows often live better lives on factory farms than chickens and pigs, for example.
Okay, so that brings me to my next question is if, we want to make smart choices like Felicia was kind of indicating, and we want to either be more mindful about our next meal. We don't want to go full in yet, but maybe we want to be more mindful about the cow's life or the chicken's life or the fish life. What is the best case scenario? What should we be looking for at the grocery store when we are purchasing this product to kind of know that these animals are doing okay prior to them being butchered?
Yeah, a good friend of mine actually started out this way, looking for like humanely raised animals, thinking that, if cows are raised in certain conditions, their lives like might actually just be worth living. But he went around asking for these like standard lists of things, and like, do you take away their genitalia without any painkillers? And it's like everybody does that. So smaller farms like might have better welfare standards, but smaller farms also don't have the resources to have like veterinarians on staff. So I think it's really, really hard to go around finding like ethically raise animals, because just so many things fundamental to raising them require cost effectiveness, which is really directly at odds with welfare conditions.
Right.
Okay.
Well, we kudos to the findings on your own and kind of going in depth and kind of figuring this out. It's kind of something that we all should maybe do more of, right? Find
A
something
little
that we're passionate
self-reflection.
about, self-reflection. Garrison Lovely, we appreciate your time, of course.